Hi everyone, I'm Sally Eaves and a warm welcome to Burning GenAI Questions Episode 3 with Dell Technologies, where our focus today is data is your differentiator in the GenAI era. It's not the AI you use, it's your data, and pairing it with the right GenAI solution that will catalyse how organisations succeed. But what does this actually mean in practice? Let's explore exactly this. So I'm now delighted to be joined by Carol Wilder, who is Vice President of ISG Product Management, Cross-Platform Software and Solutions at Dell Technologies. So without further ado, a warm welcome to our show, Carol. Great to be with you today.
Great to be with you. I think this is going to be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely likewise too. And probably the area I get most questions on a pretty much a daily basis, to be honest with you as well, with such a focus on all things generative AI at the moment. And one of our big aims today, as I kind of set up in the intro, is dispelling some of the kind of myths around this as well and getting into some of the actualization and the how of doing and making the very most of the generative AI era opportunity. So to do that, kind of to start us off, I'd love to share a little bit more, kind of drill into what's underneath getting the right generative AI solution for you and your organization. So that really goes down to that enablement layer. It's all about data. Data is your differentiator. What is your kind of start of a 10 really on, Carol, about why this matters so much and why we need to focus on here first?
Well, I think that most companies have a huge cache of data. They've used it for some purposes. And actually, as they start to look, I mean, it starts way back at the beginning. What is your business transformation? What are you trying to do? And I think it's getting those scenarios and what is that problem or efficiency, cycle time, whatever you're trying to do. And I've heard it all. I mean, there's the simple ones that we all know: coding efficiency. There's knowledge base. There's there's marketing material, marketing assistance, customer assistance, digital human. I mean, all of those, and they're all meant, to do something that is going to create an efficiency for companies. Then once you understand what you're sort of trying to do, like where you think you can improve your services or improve cycle time, improve quality, something like that, then you're looking at, okay, what data have I traditionally used and where is it? It could be in the cloud, it could be on-prem, it could be both. And it's understanding and wrangling that data and doing a real firm, what is the cleaning and the wrangling of what do I need? And then it's looking at, okay, now I want to see what insights do I want? What models do I want to use? What are the best models? What's going to fit in? And we haven't even gotten to the hardware. Most people are going to probably experiment at this stage in many, many different ways. But the fact of the matter is the data doesn't change. And we're not seeing right now data that's going to explode. It's people reusing their data and reformulating it and reimagining it in a way. So let's take knowledge-based articles, okay? They've been mined forever. But LLM gives you a lot in terms of saying, hey, you go and it's RAG, it's the retrieval, augmentation, and that process, which now has become, lore, everyone's doing it. That's a new way of looking at your data and being able to do that. So, I mean, I think it's that reimagination of older data. I really, it's not sexy. But it works. I mean, there's the case that we just came out with the city of Amarillo. Okay, they have 30 odd languages. And so that's, and they said, look, we need a better customer experience. And they basically reimagined data that they've had on city services, but they reimagined it in a way to serve the community in a much more augmented way. So that's how I see it.
I love that. I think that reimagination is exactly right. And just when you were speaking there, Carol, as well, maybe think of another kind of use case for this as well. Look at what we have in terms of reskilling and upskilling. Big needs and big opportunities around there too. Actually, some of this data reimagination could be used as a resource aid, for example, as part of that process too. So many, everywhere you look at it, there's so many ripple effects in terms of impact of doing this right. But it also kind of raises that question and focus that we've talked about, kind of data transformation at the heart of digital transformation for a while. well. But we've had these perennial challenges of kind of getting from that data, say, volume to getting to value in terms of, say, data variability challenges or volatility, different sources, where it's stored, as you mentioned already, about on-prem, hybrid or public. So we need to get that value from that data, that active intelligence, before we're starting thinking about adding on extra emergent technology and extra integrations. We have to get to the heart of using data in the right way, right role, active intelligence, as I was saying. So I love the fact of all these different use cases, but going back to kind of the layer by layer building to actually use this in the right way.
Yeah, I think, you know, and I've met with many customers, and it's kind of interesting because the perennial question is, you know, well, where should I be doing this? And I always go back to, what are you trying to solve? And let's talk about that. And then, you know, where is your data? Because storage and networking are going to be some of the largest costs. I mean, yes, the hardware can be expensive in terms of, you know, generative AI. It is. It's, you know, it's an investment. But the fact of the matter is that the storage is always going to be with you. So it's trying to figure out, how am I going to optimize what I have? And I think that's the point. And so what we're seeing is, you know, I've met with customers and they're like, look, we have 200 POCs running on the same data set. Okay, which I was like blown away. I'm like, 200. And they're like, yeah, we sliced it this way, we sliced it that way, we sliced it this way, we sliced it that way. And all for different aims in the organizations. And I just think that it's really that point where data engineers and everyone is really looking at, okay, how can I reuse this? And, you know, I mean, you have a lot of different use cases. I heard one in terms of, you know, there's a lot of summarization that has to go on in a lot of industries. Meeting summarization. Lawyers are looking for closing argument summarizations. What is the best way that's going to win me the case, or is going to, you know, how am I going to close a sale faster? How am I going to do all these things? And so they're going and looking at Salesforce databases. They're looking at, but this is data that they have. It's just looking at it in a different way. And I just find it fascinating, because it's been under our noses for quite a long time, and it just had to be unleashed with new tooling structures. And that's the bring the AI, bring the LLMs, bring the modeling, bring new models to the data that you've already had to solve different problems and to make more efficiency. And we get I've had a lot of comments through friends and colleagues and everything, like, who question about AI taking over the world. And I think that's a very interesting question. And I'm like, look, this is freeing up capacity to go do creative things. Now you don't have to do these things. You're reusing your data. You're freeing up capacity of your engineers or your marketing people or whatever to go do probably things that they hadn't been free to do. And I think that's the power of data, the power of generative AI in making people a lot more productive, probably a lot happier in terms of doing different things, and reimagining their jobs as well, as to what is my job. And I think that for me, I think that's absolutely fascinating from an organizational standpoint. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is really a catalyst for workforce augmentation, isn't it? I love what you were saying at the air about the human-machine partnership this is supporting. And it really is that enabler of time for that higher order work. I always think of Maslow's triangle of needs when we're talking about things like this. And it's allowing you to kind of go up those layers, because the foundations you're being supported with, it gives you that time for extra thinking, extra reflection, extra collaboration. So it really is supporting you on the day-to-day. And it's interesting as well, some other research I've been involved in was showing that employees, one of their trigger points for moving away potentially from their organization, if they feel that they're not getting access to these latest technologies, but also the support to actually use them in the right way too. So this training and accessibility around the technology is really helpful too. But that narrative matters so much. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's a human, kind of natural human tendency to potentially be resistant to change, isn't it? Particularly when some of the language used around emergent technologies kind of goes from sci-fi land, doesn't it, to a certain extent. So getting that conversation out there, getting people involved, making it more accessible, but showing actually this is the enabler working with you rather than taking things away, I think is super powerful as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, that underlying, we keep going back to the data, but I think that is really, once you understand your business transformation, I think then it's just the possibilities. And I've been absolutely endlessly fascinating with the business problems that people are trying to solve. And even within Dell, what we're trying to solve for, we use our own technology in order to improve our internal processes as well. And we're constantly looking at our data and looking at, okay, how can I use that in a better way for services modernization, and looking at how do we look at getting customers to the right answer faster. How do we help customers have more self-service? So how do we be able to help them with, with stabilization and having a stable and resilient data center, experience with Dell infrastructure? And all of that is based on reimagining the data that we look at in terms of machine data and customer data and things like that, that help us to provide those experiences. And we're reimagining the way that we're doing our businesses through generative AI. And we're doing a bit of experimentation as well. And that's, I think, where people will kind of look at that. I think what we're investing in is data lake houses, and looking at data lake houses, looking at data virtualization layers, and what are these new tool structures that we see. Looking at ML ops. ML ops used to be very rote. Now there's a lot of different segmentation in terms of tools that people can use. How do they use them more effectively in order to manage their data, manage their models, and be able to get a more cohesive, stable experience? And so that's the other thing, the emergence of new tools in order to help people look at those different pieces of data and the data lakes. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's, these are things that we're looking at, and we're reaching out and being much more open, or not that we weren't before, but in an open ecosystem way, because we want our customers to have that optionality. What are the options that you have? And can we build those options with you and understand what they are? So
I love that. Again, it's empowerment, isn't it? And I think you're absolutely right. I think the power of ecosystem has never mattered more, and not just for business challenges, but equally for SDG social impact challenges as well. I think you're absolutely right. Probably one of the biggest areas of growth in a really positive way over the last couple of years. I totally agree with that. And you've kind of reminded me of another area I think is interesting too, in terms of role changes and how these developments are supporting that. So just think around, for example, well, I call it rise of the generalist, in terms of having that range of skills to tap into, to feel confident with, but having a specialism within that too. So if you think about that in terms of the rise of citizen developers, for example, and how what we're talking about here with generative AI is going to really support that evolution too. So I'm really excited about that fusion really between technology and education change here.
Oh, I think that this opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of people rethinking and just, what common tools, once companies get rolling, what common tools can they pass off, or what common things, that the tasks that they've been doing, can they pass off and go focus on something? I mean, it's really interesting because a lot of people were, when LLMs and ChatGPT and all of these were coming up, people were very worried about, well, wait a minute, is this going to take over? No, it looks in the past and it helps you look at your past data, but it doesn't dictate what the future creation is. And if you can let the past and dictate what you need to do with past data to get insights and everything, that's great. And then it frees you to go create for the future. And I think that for me is a very powerful message in terms of the creative people and rethinking, like we've been talking about, rethinking your job, rethinking your task, rethinking your impact in terms of what you're doing. and being able to do that. I think the accessibility of this technology to more and more people. I mean, ChatGPT was just the beginning. It was the consumerization of generative AI, and I think it's just fascinating. My daughter, using it. She's 23, almost 24, and she came to me and she's like, "Mom, it helps me write, these different things." And I said, "Well, don't use it, completely." But she's like, "Yes, but it gives me a place to go with my prose, and it gives me a place to start." And I thought that was fascinating.
I
So
love that. I love that. It's almost like a scaffold, isn't it? That facilitate to support you. And I think that's really interesting, not just about skills accessibility, but also skills confidence too. Because you've almost got like a little bit of mentoring kind of with you, and you're getting
yeah,
reviews and you can flow again and get iterative feedback in many different ways. So I think it's going to be super powerful in that. So I'm really excited about that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think it's a real growth area. And again, it helps to change the narrative on how this is working with us, not against, if you see what I mean. It's this complementary strengths, it's supportive, it's augmentation rather than an either or. So I think that's super, super important. And I wonder if we could look at a different area as well in terms of other decision points here too, about, for example, the choice of where you're using and storing around all things generative AI models as well. I know we spoke briefly earlier about things around on-premise, hybrid and public, but perhaps we could spend a few minutes just looking at the reasons why making a particular choice and having flexibility around this as well. So what would you say there around workload choices?
I mean, it's really kind of interesting because people are passionate about where they want to operate.
Yeah.
And I sort of look at it and I go, look, build yourself trapdoors. There are some companies that are highly regulated and they have to be on premise. There are some industries that feel that they have to be very agile and that it has to be in the cloud. And there are business reasons, there's regulation reasons, and there are other. I look at how are you going to create a stable customer experience, and that could be an internal customer or an external customer, and where is the best place in order to do that once you kind of figure out what you're doing. I think that it's a very company choice. I think there are the factors that have to be weighed are security, privacy, okay, clearly, regulation, but I think there's cost, there's impact, but then you look at the agility side, and where that's going. And I think that very quickly, on premise is very much an enterprise on premise is very much an investment area with many companies in terms of LLMs, in terms of modeling, in terms of all of these tooling structures, along with where your data is. And it can give you a much more stable experience because you have much more control over what you're doing. But for some companies, that may not be the right option. And so I think where we're at is we want to build those options out for customers. So as they go through their life cycle journey, data goes through a life cycle journey, customers go through, models go through, and a generative AI is going through a life cycle. What you start at the beginning may not be where you end up. And look at your myriad of options of what you could have, and look at it and then weigh those business reasons of why you would do one thing or another.
Absolutely. Again, it's empowering that choice and agility or ambidexterity to change and kind of grow with you, so you can evolve those workload choices as your organization evolves too. So I love that. Totally agree about security, cost and control being right up there as a top three. I think maybe another consideration, particularly a growing one as well, would probably areas like energy consumption too, and how that affects where you make your choice of where running your workload as well. And it links into the other area we were speaking about in terms of growing changes, for example, around compliance needs too. So again, another area with the control aspect that will only continue to accelerate, and particularly over geographical differences too, and helping to support that, I think is really interesting. I thought that when you were talking about your daughter there, talking about homework and how generative AI would be the support there. I think again, uses there to take away and support navigation of frequent change areas. So compliance again would be right up there for me on that one. So yeah, really, really interesting choices.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna it takes times for customers to sort through what their options are. And as we've been thinking through this problem as well, we've been very dev focused
Yes.
and looking at different software stacks. And what does that mean in using one software stack or one model stack versus another model stack? And what are those choices that a financial company would make versus a retailer would make, and what are those trade-offs? Clearly highly regulated industries like finance are going to be really, really careful and about what they do, whereas maybe a retailer's less, has to be less careful because there's less oversight. And so we've been modeling and running those experiments to say, all right, what are the best options? And then trying to be, not prescriptive, but definitely have an opinion about what that could be, in order to give the best guidance, using Dell products and what we do. And that's been a real change actually for the way that we've looked, at other sort of emerging areas, in that dev focus. Clearly, as it moves through and moves into full production and applications are landing on infrastructure and models are like, okay, we're going to use this model in production in the way that we're going to continuously run. That's the end point. But right now there's a lot of experimentation. So there's people, going through, and we're trying to highlight the use cases that are most impactful, for the enterprise customers. So.
Super. I love that. I love that. And I'd like to spend a moment as well, just talking about how you're supporting customers and kind of the ecosystem more broadly, to be honest, as well, through this process, and kind of how partnership really makes a difference. And just as you were talking there, one thing that sprung to mind was what you do with validated designs too. Because I think that's super helpful in terms of taking away some of the guesswork, if you will, in terms of this process. So that's one for me that I've used myself and kind of recommended to people. But I'd love to throw that back to you, to Carol, about some of the, again, benefits of partnership and that trusted support.
Yeah, when we started to think about this earlier this year, I mean, the partner that obviously came to mind was NVIDIA. Okay, we're working with them very closely, and we work with their software stacks. And what we did was look at the most common ask that we had, which was inferencing, which is basically you have a currently running model and you're looking to continually infer where the data is taking you and where the LLM is taking you, for inferencing. And so we released that in July. But what does a Dell validated design mean? It's a lot of people, you can go on, they're open, available. There's no, but what we do is we look at it, we take an infrastructure and we come out with, if you follow what we've done, here's the results that we got. Okay. And we're able to point to clear performance, that we got as a recipe for customers to understand what they could get. And in a few weeks, we announced the release of tuning and customization of models. And again, we took it and we took the NVIDIA stack, we looked at it across. And we said, okay, these are the results, and we'll publish those results and say, this is the results that we got. And it allows customers for time to value to say, okay, this is what Dell did. And, I always liken the Dell validated designs as sort of recipes. And, I use this analogy a lot and saying, look, you could go create chocolate chip cookies and you can go get the butter and all of the ingredients. But you can go buy, in the United States, you can go buy this packet of Toll House chips. And on the back, there's a cookie recipe. Well, you can kind of look at the cookie recipe and say, well, I kind of like walnuts and that's, we give you the recipe with the performance, but you can change that. And we're having open conversations with customers on what those variations of those recipes are with your data, with what we've done in order to get the best results. And that's, essentially what a Dell validated design does. So.
Love that. That's brilliant. And again, that that collaboration, frankly, is coming to the fore. But also, we're not just talking about how we're getting more active, proactive intelligence through the right data where we started with, through the application of emergent technologies such as generative AI, but also this facilitation process along the way as well. I wonder if we could just spend a second kind of beyond the technology of how you support customers, say from cultural perspective and skills uplift, because again, so many elements come into to respect for change here, for successful change. It's not just about the technology and the tools, it's all those elements, the recipe that you brought to the fore there as well. I wonder how you support from that perspective too. I'd love to spend a moment on that.
Yeah, when we were thinking through this, clearly there's a services arm to this whole, discussion. And so, Dell has had services forever, and there's other companies. And so we're working both internally and externally to consult and help customers understand, to analyze what they need, analyze what their problems are, basically go through their life cycle of problem resolution and solutions, and say, look, this is what we can help you with, and also working outside with key, global service, system integrators, and helping them as well, and partnering with them with various, ecosystem partners to bring solutions to their customer base as well. But the services have, and if you, as we've been developing this has come alongside of us as well, because we needed to have both that, the solutions as well as the services and the consultation in order to bring this alongside, which was a really important component. And we also have internally, workload specialists that, I reach out to all the time saying, hey, this is what we're finding. What are you finding? And bringing their ideas into our labs and saying, well, wait a minute, what problem did a customer present you with? And making that cycle much faster in terms of, what they're seeing out with customers, so that we can, get to a value statements, value propositions that our customers understand and can use very quickly. And so it's that consultation, not just through services, but through our workload specialists, as well as all of our partners, in being able to give the best advice and consultation, and getting people to where they can get results very quickly.
Love that. Again, I think, more ingredients, and go back to the recipe example as well, in terms of the how of accelerating time to value. And I love how much dialogue has come to the fore here. It's really about getting rid of some of those silos, for example. Everything you talked about there was reducing some of the things we've seen about complexity or visibility or silos, as I mentioned just now, and bringing not just technology, but people together as well. And again, it just reflects the fact that when you're looking at things like generative AI, you also need an agile change management approach. It's all these elements support one another, doesn't it? So I really wanted to bring that to the fore in the conversation. You did that brilliantly, Carol. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the agility, as I've seen this early on in the process, one of the things that things run in businesses are on SKUs, like create a SKU. And I was like, this is going to move really quickly. And I'm wondering if that's not the right thing. Let's have a much more consultative approach with customers in bringing, to the forefront, what are their hardware, software, ecosystem partner, what are their true needs, and bring that together in maybe a light touch or a heavy touch in consulting, so that they're looking at everything versus, saying, this is the SKU you need, because it may not be the SKU that somebody needs. And putting all that time and effort in creating boxes that are like this SKU and this SKU and this SKU, I think in this very, very fast moving market and a lot of needs, I was like, I don't think that's the right approach right now. And we've been pretty successful in, having those conversations with customers, and, and closing with them. Okay, this is probably your best bet. And then they go through their processes, and they're, looking at their data and bringing that to the forefront. And so that's been, one of our successful things that we've been doing.
Love that. I love that. So with all this speed of change, that kind of moment to reflect along the way is important too. Is funnily enough, I'm going to a session in a minute, which is a hackathon, and a lot of mentoring and activities there. We're using generative AI as part of the advances we're doing today. But one of the questions I had before was kind of, you looked at the question, what underpinned it was the assumption that, for example, everything about generative AI is ChatGPT. For example, it's not the other different flavors like Llama 2 and all the rest of it, if you see what I mean. So again, I always like to take it back to education, and the more vehicles we have, like shows like this, like hackathons, like all the different dialogues you're having with your customers, ecosystem partners, employees, bringing that all together, that is absolutely the way forward to move the benefits and the opportunity here of generative AI forward, but also do it in a purposeful way, not just the choices we're making about applying the technology, but how we're developing it as well. So many elements to get this recipe right, Carol, isn't there?
Yeah, I think the models, I find it fascinating as I'm hearing more and more research. And, we have, I have get updated on, oh, this is the new model development. I'm like, wow, that's really fascinating. And I think it's going to continue on the innovation. Usually you see this thing that comes up and over and then it will, settle out. I think there's more innovation curves that are coming very soon that will, people will be like, oh my God, now I have new tools in how I can reimagine maybe video data, how I can reimagine, different types of data that will, help with different problems. And I think the model development, along with, the data developments and data virtualization and the way that we're doing optimizing data, I think will change those innovation cycles. So I think there's way more to come. I think it's really fascinating.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Super, super exciting. And I think what we'll do, Carol, as well, I know we're live at the minute, but we'll share some links after the show. So we'll put that in the discussion chat for everybody as well, just so we can look at some of these resources, whether it's the Dell validated design, some of the case studies, but also some resources around education too. So help you with your journey for everybody watching and listening at the moment, for organizations of all sizes too, because we're really super keen as part of this series to kind of open out these opportunities. Enablement, that key word, as part of our conversation today, I think, Carol.
Oh yeah, I mean, I have my product managers that work with me. They're constantly sending me, hey, did you see this YouTuber who did this with this? And I'm like, and in my free time, I'm looking at YouTube channels of different people doing different things, and it gives us a lot of great ideas. It's been awesome. So.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. We'll keep looking for those new ideas as well. And I was going to say, we've got 1 minute left for a top takeaway for the audience. And I love the curiosity you brought to the fore there about keep looking. I think that's a really important point, is it's keep learning, keep looking for new information. But I'd love to kind of give you a 1 minute ender about a top takeaway for people to consider that they might be able to look at really quickly to start moving forward on this journey.
I think it's, there's no right now right or wrong answers. And I think there's no one thing that's going to solve everything. But start the journey with, what's the one thing that could unleash my creativity if I solved something that is somewhat rote? And how can I rethink my data in order to go solve that problem?
Love it. That's fantastic. Thank you, Carol, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure. We'll have to come back to this as well. I think particularly with so much happening, I think it'll be really interesting. And there's a little bit of news that we'll be sharing in a couple of months' time that fits in just into this subject area as well. So for everybody, watch this space on that too. But thank you for now. That's the end of our session on data is your differentiator in the generative AI era. We really hope this has been really helpful for you. We'd love your questions and feedback. And again, we'll be sharing more resources to support this journey for you too. So for now, this has been Sally Eaves for Tomorrow's Tech Today with Carol. Thank you so much for your time, Carol.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for listening to this episode of Tomorrow's Tech Today. If you enjoy what we're doing, please subscribe to us and leave a review. It really means a lot. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram and see more behind the scenes video footage on YouTube. Thanks for listening.